Okay, today let's talk about swords. This is a sword. It looks like a Swiss Army knife, but according to Japanese law, it's a sword. That's true of this SOG, this R. Murphy Fisherman's Pal, this pair of Spyderco Tenacious Knives, this pair of Sanren Moos, this Buck Nobleman, this Higo no Kami, and this Gerber Multiplier 400 Compact Sport Multi-Tool. Although Japan's had a hate-love-hate relationship with swords since pretty much the 19th century, in the late 1990s a series of stabbings led to even tougher laws that tolerated shorter and shorter blades. Then, on June 8, 2008, Tomohiro Kato drove a rental truck into a Sunday crowd in Akihabara, killing 3 people and injuring 2. After abandoning the truck, he stabbed a dozen people, killing 4, before being subdued by the police. The fallout from this massacre included the temporary suspension of Akihabara's tradition of closing the street to automobile traffic every Sunday, and even stricter knife laws for the entire country. Kato used a double-edged Smith & Wesson HRT, but the restrictions fell on all knives and knife owners on July 5, 2009. As of this report, it should be noted it is still legal to rent large trucks, and no new restrictions have been applied to them. Basically, as I understand it, and I am in no way, shape, or form a legal expert, so please do your own research just in case I've finally lost it completely, which is entirely possible. The following are illegal to possess without a license. 1. Any knife exceeding 15 centimeters or 5.9 inches in length. This rule does not apply to kitchen knives, but more on that strange thing later. 2. Any dagger, defined as a spear point blade or double-edged blade, exceeding 5.5 centimeters or 2.17 inches in length. 3. Spears or yari exceeding 15 centimeters. 4. Naginata pole swords with blades exceeding 15 centimeters. 5. Japanese aikuchi daggers with even short ones subject to regulation. 6. Any knife that automatically opens to more than a 45-degree angle, switchblades. Also, it is an offense punishable by up to 3 years imprisonment with hard labor or a 300,000 yen fine to carry a knife with a blade of more than 6 centimeters or 2.36 inches in the absence of a reasonable purpose, which we'll talk about in just a second. The Swiss Army knife's blade is 7 centimeters or 2 3/4 inches long, which is why it's classified as a sword. This means it's not illegal for me to own any of these knives. It's only illegal for me to carry them in public. But wait, there's more. According to the law as I read it, and remember my earlier warning about having lost it completely, it's illegal to carry non-locking blades under 6 centimeters in length, which means this Spyderco Squeak, this Tikit Canoe, and this Leatherman Squirt PS4 should be legal for me to carry. The blades are non-locking, and they're all under 6 centimeters. Also, as I read the law, fixed blades and locking folders with blades shorter than 5.5 centimeters should be legal to carry as well. That seems simple enough. Well, not really. This is Japan, which means there is also another law that has to be considered. The Minor Offenses Law. This law states that people cannot carry knives unless they have legitimate reasons to carry them. Now, some examples of legitimate reasons to carry a knife are: 1. You're carrying the knife home after buying it, or you're taking it to the business where you purchased it to have it fixed. Please note that you will be expected to have a receipt if you claim you just bought it, and the receipt will have to be dated that day. 2. You're on your way to or from camping or fishing and are carrying other gear that proves that's what you're doing. You aren't, for example, allowed to be in a business suit and carrying a briefcase and say, I'm like going fishing or something, officer. In this case, it's legal to carry a fixed blade up to 5.9 inches. So for example, I can't every day carry this Swiss Army knife, but if I'm going fishing, I can carry this R. Murphy. 3. You're carrying the knife to an authorized dealer to sell it. You can't just be carrying it to your friend's house to sell it because you are not an authorized dealer. 4. You're a chef or cook carrying your knife between your residence and your place of employment. Interestingly, chef's knives can be any length, especially if you only use them at home. But oyster fishermen have had trouble because an oyster knife, being double-edged, qualifies as a dagger. However, until you arrive at any of these locations, the knife must be properly packed and stored. You can't just leave the blade attached to your belt or slip the knife in your pocket and hop on a train. Some examples of crappy reasons to carry a knife are 1. Carrying a knife for personal protection. 2. Carrying a miniature knife as a fashion statement. This means neck knives and keychain knives, however large they are out. 3. Carrying your personal collection to a knife show. Knife show makers, in theory, as I understand it, have to ship their knives to the show. 4. Carrying it to a group or club meeting to show to mutual knife lovers. Complicating matters. Many police use the 5.5 centimeter dagger rule as the maximum allowable blade length for any blade. Once again, as I read the law, these knives here should be legal. However, according to a Tokyo knife store owner I interviewed, the areas of Shinjuku and Shibuya have pretty much banned knives altogether. There also seems to be a tendency to equate the word legitimate with the word specific. So for example, it seems to me to be natural to include a blade, especially one that's part of a multi-tool, like either of these, in an earthquake kit, especially when you're living in a region prone to large earthquakes. It's also true, with chances of rolling blackouts disrupting train travel, that I could be forced to have a very long walk home. However, as I read the law, I can't carry something because I might need it. I can only carry it if I specifically need it before I start carrying it. It should be added that the same law applies to martial arts weapons. For example, I've been studying karate for around 15 years now, and for most of that I've been carrying bow and jo staffs and a large wooden sword down the street and on trains. Every time I've done this, I've had to either carry them in a bag or bind them together. Even carrying a wooden sword without a cover would probably get me in trouble. It's also important, very important, for foreigners in Japan to remember that, like it or not, there is a different set of rules for us than there is for Japanese. In a famous incident in 2009, a 74-year-old tourist was arrested for carrying a law-busting knife 3 days before the law actually took effect. All he'd done is walk into a koban, or a police stand, and ask for directions. They asked if he had a knife. He said yes, and he was in jail. Now, it's true that it's possible to carry a knife and the police will be none the wiser unless they stop and search you, and technically, according to the law, they shouldn't be able to stop and search you unless they have a specific reason. However, once you use the knife, you're pretty much openly breaking the law. I've considered carrying a can of tuna or a small can of fruit along with the Swiss Army knife and saying it's for my lunch and or supper if I get caught. But I have the same problem if I use the knife for anything else. Also, a series of recent knife attacks have made non-knife people even more paranoid about blades, and they're likely to react if you pull out a knife even in your own home. All in all, the law on the surface seems to be deliberately confusing. However, it's important to remember that the Japanese have a dozen ways to say no without actually saying no. Some of the ways to say no actually involve saying yes. A law this confusing is actually quite easy to understand. Welcome to Japan. Don't carry a knife. But that's just my opinion. It may be mere blather.